in the U.S. Air Force, we take a lot of pride in the title airman, to be an American airman. And I think you can make a pretty good argument that Thomas Selfridge was the original, first, and maybe best American airman. It's quite an honor, actually.
In the Air Force, we look to role models and leaders who inspire us, people whose courage and vision paved the way for what we do today. Thomas Selfridge was one of those pioneers, a real trailblazer whose spirit of innovation helped shape the United States Air Force.
In these silent fields of Arlington, among soldiers and statesmen, lies a young officer whose story is woven into the earliest chapters of human flight. His name is Thomas Ethelyn Selfridge. He was the first best pilot in the history of the U.S. Air Force, and the first person in history to die in a powered aircraft. But his legacy is far greater than his final flight. It is a story of intellect, courage, and a restless drive to reach the skies long before the world truly understood what flight would mean. Thomas Selfridge was born February 8, 1882, in San Francisco, California, a city brimming with invention and ambition. Distinguished military family. His grandfather, Thomas O. Selfridge Sr., a naval officer who served with distinction in the Union Navy during the Civil War, and his uncle, Thomas O. Selfridge Jr., was also an admiral in the Navy. Thomas E. Selfridge, the grandson, grew up surrounded by tales of exploration and military service, dreaming of the sea and the stars. From an early age, young Thomas showed an intense curiosity for how things worked, taking apart clocks, studying engines, and sketching machines that could lift themselves into the air. As a young teen, he applied for the Naval Academy, but then in 1900, he received an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point, a break from family tradition, serving in the Army, and beginning a journey that would change his life and aviation history. He earned a reputation as a bright, inventive cadet. He was not only a serious student, but also an artist, his sketchbooks filled with designs for bridges, engines, and early aircraft. His time at the Academy coincided with one of humanity's greatest turning points. In 1903, the same year Selfridge graduated, brothers Orville and Wilbur Wright took to the air at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, proving that powered flight was possible and launching not just an aircraft, but the dreams of countless young Americans. For Selfridge, that event was more than just an inspiration to dream. It was a calling. After graduation, Lieutenant Selfridge was assigned to the U.S. Army Artillery Corps, stationed as fate would have it, back in his hometown of San Francisco. It was there where he was on duty when the city was shaken to its core by the great earthquake of April 18, 1906. He proved himself not just as an engineer, but as a leader, calm, quick thinking, and unflinching in crisis. Yet even as he helped rebuild his city, his thoughts remained fixed on the promise of flight.
If the idea was for Thomas Selfridge to join the Army and see the world, it must have come as something of a disappointment for him to be assigned to San Francisco, his hometown, as his first duty station after graduating from the academy. But it turned out to be an incredible stroke of good fortune, primarily for the people of San Francisco, as they had this Army officer who was not only capable, but very well familiar with the city of San Francisco and able to jump right in and render aid after the earthquake. And then, of course, as his reward for services performed in that aftermath, he was given the opportunity to select his duty assignment. And Tom Selfridge obviously had this idea that he wanted to fly. He wanted to check in with the Wright brothers and understand this new, incredible technology that was developing the field of aviation.
So, in 1906, Selfridge reached out directly to the Wright brothers, even traveling to their bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio. He proposed working with them, offering his engineering skills, military insight, and his willingness to test their aircraft. But the Wrights declined.
One of the things about the Wright brothers that I think is not very well understood is that they were definitely interested in inventing an airplane, but I think more interesting to them was the idea of selling an airplane. And so the last thing they wanted was somebody from the government hanging around and copying their notes and seeing what they were doing. No, the Wright brothers wanted to keep that technology for themselves and then to sell that to the government and to the highest bidder.
For most men, that rejection might have been the end of a dream. For Selfridge, it became fuel. If the Wright brothers wouldn't have him, he would find another way to take to the air. In 1907, Selfridge found a new ally in invention, Alexander Graham Bell, the famous creator of the telephone. Bell had turned his scientific curiosity skyward, fascinated by the possibility of heavier-than-air flight. He formed the Aerial Experiment Association, or AEA, a small collective of dreamers determined to make controlled, powered flight a reality. The group was unlike anything else in early aviation. Rather than guarding ideas in secrecy, the AEA operated like a laboratory of open innovation. Each member contributed unique expertise. Bell, the visionary, leader, and financier. Glenn Curtiss, the brilliant engine designer. Frederick Casey Baldwin and J.A.D. McCurdy, both daring experimenters and pilots. And Selfridge, the disciplined soldier-engineer who brought structure, precision, and courage to their work. Together, they built and flew a series of pioneering aircraft. The Red Wing, White Wing, and Junebug, each improving on the last. Their innovations were revolutionary, moving ailerons that allowed true lateral control, lightweight Curtiss engines that increased endurance, and refined frameworks that balanced power and stability. In March 1908, Selfridge himself designed and piloted the Red Wing, becoming the first U.S. Army officer to fly a powered aircraft. Though the plane was damaged on landing, it marked a milestone in American aviation, a flight that proved courage and curiosity could propel progress faster than fear. In the AEA, Selfridge had found what the Wright brothers denied him, a community of inventors willing to take risks, share ideas, and trust in one another's vision. And through those collaborations, the young lieutenant began shaping not just his destiny, but the foundation of modern flight itself. In addition to flying with the AEA, Selfridge was one of 2 young officers who were selected by the Army to test another technology, dubbed Army Signal Corps Dirigible No. 1. Selfridge and Frank P. Lamb, who would later become general after 40 years in the Army, were sent to Fort Myer, adjacent to Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C., to fly and test the dirigible. Suspended beneath its long, cigar-shaped envelope, the pair charted a cautious course through the air, testing balance, propulsion, and control, fundamentals that would later define the science of flight. Their 1907 test marked a major milestone, the U.S. Army's first powered flight. It was a moment of both triumph and promise. For Selfridge, it was another step on a path that would soon lead to heavier-than-air machines, and ultimately to tragedy. But in that quiet summer sky, Selfridge and Lamb proved that military flight was no longer a dream. It was becoming a discipline, and soon a destiny. Selfridge, now having flown with Bell and the AEA, and with Lamb and the dirigible, was now by a wide margin the most experienced pilot in the U.S. military. And so it was he, the obvious choice to return to Fort Myer and test the Wright Flyer for possible military use. He reported to Fort Myer for the Wright test in early September 1908. Orville Wright brought the Wright Flyer to Fort Myer. Selfridge was assigned to observe the flights, and he soon volunteered to ride as Orville's passenger on one of the final test demonstrations.
And the Wright brothers actually at one point filed a lawsuit against Alexander Graham Bell and the Aerial Experimentation Association because the Wrights claimed that the AEA was trespassing, if you will, on their technology. And so when Selfridge first interacted with the Wrights, there was an active lawsuit that was pending in a U.S. court. And so it must have been very awkward for Tom Selfridge to serve as the official observer of the Wrights demonstration as they were trying to sell their technology to the Army, given the fact that that lawsuit was still hanging out there.
On September 17, 1908, the Wright Flyer soared gracefully into the Virginia sky. For 7 minutes, everything went perfectly. Then, without warning, one of the propeller blades cracked mid-flight. The vibration shook the fragile aircraft apart. At a height of about 150 feet, the flyer plunged toward the ground. Orville Wright was badly injured, his legs and ribs broken. Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge suffered a fractured skull. He died that evening, becoming the first person to perish in a powered airplane accident. He was only 26 years old, but his sacrifice would forever remind the world that progress comes not without peril. Selfridge was laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery, not far from the field where the crash occurred. His grave, modest yet enduring, marks the spot where the age of aviation took its first human cost. Visitors still come, aviators, cadets, and historians, to honor the young man who helped open the sky. In 1917, less than a decade after his death, as America prepared to enter World War I, the U.S. Army Air Service established a new base north of Detroit. It was named Selfridge Field in honor of Lieutenant Thomas E. Selfridge, the Army's first air casualty and its first pioneer of flight. Today, more than 100 years later, the Air Force and other branches of the U.S. military still project American air power from Selfridge Air National Guard Base. Every plane that lifts from its runways carries with it the spirit of the young lieutenant who dared to dream before flight was safe or even certain.
For more than a century, American airmen, first in the United States Army Air Service, then the Army Air Corps, and now in today's Air Force and the Michigan Air National Guard, have carried forward the legacy of Thomas Selfridge. His legacy is one of pushing boundaries, serving the nation, and driving progress. It's about exploration, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of what's next. That's who Thomas Selfridge was, and that's who we continue to strive to be.
Thomas Ethelyn Selfridge lived at the intersection of invention and courage. He built, he tested, he flew, and in doing so, he joined a lineage of explorers who gave everything for the advancement of humankind. From the fields of Fort Myer to the runways of Michigan, his name endures, a reminder that every leap forward begins with a risk, and every flight owes something to the first who dared.